All right, today I'm interviewing my grandmother, Sheila Hernandez. Could you tell me your age and the generation?
Sure, I'm a baby boomer. I was born in August 1958, so next month I'll be 67 years old.
Yay! That's awesome. Okay, so my first question was, where were you born?
I was born outside of New Orleans, Louisiana, in a city called Metairie, and I've lived in the South pretty much all my life.
Okay, awesome. Were there any big global or political events that made a big impact on you, your family, or someone you knew?
Well, I would say in the 60 plus years that I can remember, one of my first memories was the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And, I was only like 5 years old at the time, but I do remember just seeing all the people crying and, how much of an impact he was. Such a charismatic. I mean, even as a kid, you could tell he had a lot of good things to say, a lot of good things he wanted to do. And then him being assassinated, it was, impactful even to a 5-year-old. I think later on in the 60s, the civil rights movement, especially living here in the South, we saw it a lot. And I remember when schools were segregated and, we first started having, I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time, and we actually had kids from the inner city that were bused out to the suburbs to our schools. And while I would say most of the schools were pretty accepting, I would say from my point of view, the kids that were being bused from the inner city out to our school were much more uncomfortable being there than we were at having them there. There were situations and trouble that I remember. I remember them, the high school kids, coming over to the junior high school and rocking the buses, and us having to be, kept inside, and the school buses wouldn't run that day. We had to wait for our parents to come and get us. And it's probably the first school lockdown ever.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, before all the chaotic, that's
Right. But at the same time, like I said, I remember segregation. I remember, seeing the whites only for bathrooms and restaurants and different places. I remember seeing, black people picketing to be able to eat at those restaurants and stuff. And I could never understand why segregation existed. So desegregation was not anything that bothered me in the way that I did not want to associate with black people. I was always brought up that all people are equal, all people are the same, God created all of us. But it was scary sometimes at school as a 7th grader, to have all of that going on in your school when you'd never really been exposed to that.
That's crazy to even think, because I don't, you've never even really told me about that. So thinking about how, because you're not that old, so thinking about how, near that was, it's really hasn't been that long.
It hasn't.
That's crazy.
It hasn't. No. In this, we also had the Vietnam protests in the late 60s and early 70s. Yeah, honestly, I have to say, I didn't understand the protests about the Vietnam War as much as I understood the protests about segregation and equal rights and things. Vietnam was a country on the other side of the world. We didn't have the internet. You didn't have the global. We had the 3 television stations, and you only knew what the news was bringing you instead of all of this other stuff. And I knew that the United States had fought in so many other wars. My father fought in the Korean War. He was over there, in fact, had his 21st birthday in Korea. Never really talked much about it because I think that wars, even in Korea, were very, very different even from the Korean War that was less than 20 years later. Just the military tactics, the style, that you didn't have as much of the hand-to-hand combat. We were starting to use helicopters and,
Mortars.
more bombing, the napalm,
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand when I would see on the television news about them dropping the napalm, and I would see all of the orange smoke and everything, but nobody knew the long-term effects that it was going to have on the soldiers that inhaled it and stuff too. So Vietnam War, I remember my brother was in the draft pick, but he got called in, but when he went for his physical and he had flat feet, so he got turned away.
Yeah.
Which was a good thing, I guess. Flat feet
That's
would
crazy
do that for
for
you.
a big war like that, for them to turn away somebody with just flat feet and
Right.
not just something bigger for them to stop it. That's
I think we just had we had a stronger military already, and then I think we had more people available. There were more kids because the baby boomers,
Yep. And it was
had
a
the
big-
biggest generation,
Yep.
and all too. So,
Huh. Okay. Well, we kind of went through and talked about wars. The ones that you've kind of lived through.
well,
Talk
I was
about
going to
them a little
say,
bit.
one of the other ones that I remember was just absolutely spectacular was the first Gulf War. And I remember now this is when we started having like satellite news, so you could see stuff live instead of just the journalists being over there recording it and sending it back for the news stations. And I remember seeing the bombs exploding over Israel, but they were exploding up in the sky because even back then in the 90s, Israel had their defense system so that it detonated the bombs while they were still up in the sky. But it just really made me think about how God was protecting Israel, because it just looked like they had a dome over them.
Yeah.
And it just, the bombs weren't getting through. It was just amazing. It was like fireworks, but you knew that they were bombs and they were really meant to kill people.
Yeah.
But yet those people were being protected, I felt, by God.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then all the other wars, 9/11. I remember exactly where I was when 9/11 happened, and, hearing about it, and then them saying that it was, don't know why this plane crashed. They thought it was like an accident or something. And then when the second one hit, and it was like, we're under attack. And then the third one at the Pentagon, and then we found out about the one that went down in the field out in Pennsylvania. We actually got sent home from work that day because nobody knew if they were going to bomb Atlanta because of it being a major city. And they didn't want people on the highways and, concentrated in the city or anything. So we got sent home
Everybody's
from
just
work.
scared.
Yeah, and then going in and looking for Bin Laden and Saddam Hussein and all the people that we thought were the terrorist enemies, and then come to find out it was just country after country after country was just all against the United States.
Yep.
And it's just kind of been that way ever since. That's probably the biggest fear now, is just knowing that there's so many countries against us.
Yeah.
And what if they all decided to get together? Would we really be able to defend ourselves?
Yeah. Even though we're so strong, it's hard when you have that much power against you.
Exactly. And the fact that they, it's not, like I said, it's not war like back in the Korean War. It's not war where you just know your enemy is the guy across from you with the gun and you got to be the one to shoot first or something. Now it's just an infiltration.
Exactly. It's machines, it's robots, and it's
Yes.
not even humans anymore. It's robots that are sent.
Exactly.
And bombs and-
Exactly. I remember, when they first started using IEDs.
The IUDs, yeah.
Yeah.
But they would
And-
cover them up in sand, and people would step on them and blow up.
Or the tankers or the convoys, and it would just wipe out, car after car after car. And it's like, that's not even fair, strapping the bombs to the children and the women and stuff. That's not fighting fair.
Yeah. No, it's not.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Was there any big protests that you agreed with or disagreed with?
Well, like I said, I agreed with the equal rights protest. I was actually a fan of Martin Luther King. I enjoyed hearing him speak. I enjoyed, the nonviolent approach that he took.
Yeah.
To ending or gaining equal rights for everyone. And like I said, I was really glad to see when that finally passed. I remember the March on Washington and Selma, and how unfair it was, when they would turn the fire hoses on all the people that were marching. And that one was a really big impact. Like I said, the Vietnam War, those protests, not as much. The protest for women's rights to be equal, as a woman in the business world, I definitely could see the inequality in what women were paid versus a man in the same role. There was what they called the glass ceiling, which meant, you couldn't get past that. You could see the people above you that were making more than you, but there was this glass ceiling that just capped you out. But the women's rights protests, I think they took that a little too far. Yes, equal pay for equal jobs, but, I wasn't really all that into burning bras or wanting to be able to do some of the same jobs that a man, equal rights. Okay, did that mean that I was going to, be someone who was going to have to do heavy lifting and all that kind of stuff? I'm not qualified to do that, so I don't care about being equal, to say that for a job. And now I look at the protests that are happening now, and there's very few of them that I agree with, because now I think it's gotten to the point people are protesting and they don't even fully understand. They're just wanting to be part of something.
Yeah.
And to me, that indicates that they don't feel like they are a part of anything, because they just go from one protest to one protest, And while I understand that protesting is our right as an American, it's not always right to protest against America that gave you the right to protest.
I understand that.
And they just seem to be getting very, very lame.
Yeah, some of them don't. It doesn't make as much sense, to be out there and protesting.
Right.
But like for when it was civil rights and things like that, it's a bigger thing.
Yeah.
And it made more sense to be peacefully protesting, because there was also a lot more aggression behind that. There's not anymore.
Right.
Things can be fixed in different ways.
Exactly. The whole Black Lives Matter, every life matters. Absolutely every life on the planet matters, okay? Regardless of race, religion, color, anything like that. But those protests, why did they have to become so violent to the point that they were destroying cities?
In their own businesses that were supporting black. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. The businesses that were right there in the black communities were getting torn up and busted into and vandalized and everything like that. So, a lot of the protesting nowadays, people just take it too far. They just take it too far.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Were there any big changes, especially when you were growing up? Were there big changes that scared or excited you at all?
I think this is probably the toughest one. Probably, I didn't see it then, but it is really true that as you get older, you look back on things and you see stuff in a completely different light. I'm not really sure if that's what they call old age wisdom or what, but I see the progression of when God was removed from schools, when prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance and all of those things, which were the moral foundation from what our country had been based on for almost 200 years. And then those things are removed. and you start seeing the decline of everything. Back in the 90s, when the shooting at Columbine High School in Colorado happened, and it was the first known school shooting that really got national public attention and everything, and everybody was like, where was God, while this shooting was going on? Well, that's because you didn't want God in the schools. You basically said, leave God at the door, And while we pray for our children to be protected and everything, it's that you pushed God out, and what do you think is going to come and take his place? So the whole government assistance, didn't realize it back when things started, but now I see the whole decay of the family, because women were told, we'll give you money if you have that baby and you're not married, but if you're married, you don't get as much. And so why get married? So the decay of the human family started. So many things that you see how it built, the overall, to the point now that the big beautiful bill has passed just a couple of days ago, and they're talking about all of the government assistance that's being taken away. Well, when I was born, and for the first 10, 15 years, there wasn't government assistance. Everybody worked. And while some people may have had more than others, everybody had the right to be able to work. Everybody had the right to be able to save money. Everybody had the right to be able to own a home. And now it's like people don't even try.
No, because it's given to them instead of having to work for it, so it's a different.
It's given to them, not to the same extent.
But I was going to say it's changed differently.
Yeah, but so now the person who's getting government assistance and government housing and food stamps and all of that, they want everything to be equal, so that the person who's worked hard their whole life and drives a nice car, lives in a nice home, or doesn't have to worry about where their food is coming from, the people who don't want to work for it think that the other people should just give it to them. Oh, well, you need to give up some of yours so that I can have more. Well, how about you work a little bit harder? Now that's just the way I view things. But again, I've kind of seen this whole progression over 60 years of the more somebody gives you, the less you try to do for yourself. And I think that's where the American dream has really, it's died off. It's died off. The American dream now is, let me get as much as I can from America, and when they quit giving to me, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to protest against America. That's what makes no sense.
Don't get it. Okay, last question. How big of a difference is it from today and when you were my age? I'm 20. So when you were 20, how big of a difference was it from then until now? Or did you expect it to be how it is now when you were my age?
No, I didn't expect a lot of the things to be so much different. When I was 20, that would have been 1978, things were not all that different. We did have, equal rights had passed, civil rights, women, everybody could vote. Everybody had, equal opportunity. I think that there was still a feeling of safety in America, living in the United States. I know at 20 years old, I had Jeff, and even when he was little and growing up, for the first, 10 years or so, it was kind of the same as me. Go outside and play. I didn't know exactly where he was. He'd be gone for hours. I figured he's going to find his way home. If not, I'd get out and start driving around looking for him.
But it was safer.
It was safe. We didn't think about the things that are happening now. And I'm not saying that they didn't happen back then. I don't think it was as prevalent. And certainly we didn't hear about it. I think that social media, the internet, the instantly knowing what's going on, not just in your city, your state, your country, but all over the world, that has changed the perspective on a lot of things. It's good in some ways, but it's also bad because social media has been used to not always be truthful. It's one thing to have news come on when the president's assassinated or when somebody has started bombing another country. But when news comes on and it's not the truth, it's somebody putting their opinion on there. And social media has divided this country, I think, more than anything else, because everybody's putting their opinion.
Yep.
And your opinion is not the truth. And everybody says, oh, well, I'm telling my truth. Well, that's your truth from your perspective. It still
Not
doesn't
everybody's
mean.
gonna agree with it either.
Exactly. And so it starts this division.
Yep.
And then it still doesn't mean that it's the truth.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's kind of the old, there's your side of the story, my side of the story, and then really what happened.
Exactly.
And I think that, social media has been a big downfall.
It blurs it completely.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's just like, I get on Facebook and some stuff, even from people I know, I might read the first 6 words and I'm like, just keep scrolling. I just really don't even want to get into that. I'm not going to state anything on it. So I really don't even want to know.
Yeah, no, I get that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Wishy.
Okay.